So welcome in. This is the Washington State Department of Agriculture Regional Markets Program workshop on designing cold storage with CoolBots. CoolBots are, you can see in the photos here, are these little devices that we're going to learn more about from a couple of folks from the company that makes CoolBots. They're joining us here on the call. Patricia and Julia, you'll hear from them in a little bit. My name's Galen Van Horn, and I work in the Regional Markets Program, and I help run the Local Food System Infrastructure Grant, which cold storage is a big part of. That's a big part of our local food system infrastructure. So that's why we wanted to build out the knowledge in the state for how to build CoolBots and use these as a piece of your toolkit for cold chain management for farm and food businesses. So moving ahead here, our agenda, I'm going to talk for a little bit. I'm going to try and keep it to the minimum because we have Patty, who's an OG CoolBot alumni, and she's the one you want to hear from today. So quickly, I'm going to go through, do I need a WSDA license? Question mark. Some considerations for maintaining the cold chain. And then we'll get into Patty's thoughts and advice on CoolBot types and installation guides, and then how to size and choose a compatible AC unit. Okay, so jumping right in, do I need a WSDA license? There's a license called the Food Storage Warehouse License. That is probably one of our not many people know about this license. And it is for facilities where food is stored, kept, or held for distribution to wholesale facilities, retail outlets, and restaurants. Essentially making sure that it's free of like rodents and that it's kept clean and that the food then is going to be of good quality for public health. There is a large exemption for fresh fruit and vegetables and grain elevators. So many small, mid-sized farms, if you're just doing fresh fruit and vegetables, you don't need a food storage warehouse license. But if you're doing other things, then you may need one. So that's why I wanted to add this in here. You can learn more at the WSDA Food Safety website, which I have linked in the QR code there. And as I mentioned, we'll be sending out the links to all of these following up from the presentation. There's one more license I wanted to point out, which is the WSDA Food Processor license. So for the handling or processing of any food in any manner of preparation for sale for human consumption at a fixed location. A little bit jargony there, sorry. So this includes teas, baked goods, cider, ready-to-eat, salad mixes, dried fruit, frozen berries, many other products. There is an exemption for operating under a cottage food permit, which is basically a low volume of sales. And again, learn more at the food safety website. This isn't the purpose of this presentation. I just wanted to bring y'all's attention to it in case you were curious about learning more and making sure that you're supporting food safety and public health like we all know we want to. Okay, so jumping into maintaining the cold chain. And this is something that all food businesses have to be considering. I mean, most everyone, especially farms that are harvesting from the field and then trying to get it all the way to the marketplace. So I have a little diagram here of the quote unquote cold chain from harvest to cooling the product, to storing the product, transporting it to your final marketplace, whether that's a grocery store or a farmer's market. And we have kind of four kind of mantras here, I guess. Pick it cool. So fresh produce is alive and breathing, and removing field heat is a priority. A higher temperature on the product means a higher respiration rate. So it's the produce is actually breathing more quickly, and that reduces its shelf life. So you have a shorter shelf life and you'll lower value for your product at the marketplace. If you pick it clean and you avoid cut produce surfaces contacting soil, um, then you are increasing your product quality and food safety. So remove excess dirt and trim at harvest as much as possible. And basically having a plan for how you're going to accomplish that for each specific product that you're growing. Keeping it cool and putting it to sleep is the final kind of core thing to keep in mind, because produce needs to be cooled all the way to the core. And there's a lot of different options for cooling and storage. And that's where the topic of this workshop comes in, CoolBots. So CoolBots are a storage supporting technology. As we're going through the cold chain here, there's a few things that you want to be keeping in mind in terms of tracking. So temperature for sure, and humidity. And then a couple other things to keep in mind are airflow, like what's the airflow like in your space? And do you have products that are either high producers of ethylene or really sensitive to ethylene? And if you're not sure what ethylene is, that's okay. Um, what I've linked here is the UC Davis produce guides, which are a great resource for available in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. They include specific maturity and quality indices along the post-harvest handling and store, along with post-harvest handling and storage specifications. So they talk about ethylene there a little in those guides there. And so I definitely recommend, you want to have actually probably a few thermometers in different places, maybe even ones that you're using to take the internal temperature of products to test out your setup and see how quickly are you actually cooling things. And then some products are really sensitive to humidity too. They either want to be picked wet or they don't want to be picked wet. They want to be stored a little bit more wet or they don't. So those are all things to consider at the product level. Okay, really quickly, this is my final couple slides. We have some cooling options. So as I mentioned, higher temperature, higher respiration rates equals shorter shelf life. We do not want a shorter shelf life. We want a long shelf life because we want to get the highest value for our product. We want our products to be lasting longer on the shelf and lasting longer in our customers' fridges. And that's the reason why they're willing to pay a little bit extra for our products. And a little stat here from the Wholesale Success Guide. For every 18 degrees increase in temperature, the rate of decay increases 2 to 3 times. So we want to be getting that field, as I mentioned, removing field heat is a priority. So here we see the approximate cooling time in hours for ice, water, and just a cooler, just putting something in a fridge. And then what's called forced air cooling, which is a lesser used technique, and I'll show you an example here in a little bit. We see that ice and water are very fast, and that's probably what the majority of folks on this call use to remove field heat, but those both require additional inputs. Now, it's a lot of labor to set up the cooling, the hydro cooling or the water basins, dunk tanks, or spray tables. And then there's so significant food safety considerations for making sure that that water stays sanitized. Using a cooler to remove field heat there in the third column may work in very specific situations, but it's often too slow to keep the shelf life up for sensitive products. Forced air may be an option for some crops that don't require a water step. It doesn't require a water step, and I'll kind of show that now. Oh, one more note, just to be aware of. There's also, you can chill things too much. So there's chilling injury. So back to those UC Davis produce guides, being sure that you're getting your product into the proper temperature range. So almost done here. Forced air cooling. Harvest and packing are often the largest labor costs on small farms. And so finding a way to decrease labor costs is at that step is really a great priority. And then also reducing water usage is good, can be helpful, you know, if water is a limited resource for you, especially, but then also from that food safety perspective of not having to have all of those sanitized steps. So just kind of going over this diagram here, the red box I've highlighted is your cooling unit, or it could be a CoolBot. And the yellow box is the forced air cooling setup. So this would be all sitting within a cooler. And the blue arrows show the desired airflow. So coming out of the CoolBot and then running down and around the room across the product. So you place your product next to a large fan that's circled in yellow. Uh, and then with plastic or vinyl tarp to seal the top and sides, which forces cooled air to be drawn over the product. I've included a link here from the University of Vermont Extension on how to understand this approach and build one. So I wanted to share this as a source to look into. This is an option to explore for sensitive crops that don't want to be washed with water and also that don't rely on high humidity because you're going to be drying your product out with this air flow over it. Here are a couple real world examples. On the left is a DIY setup being used to cool watermelons. And then on the right is a more commercial setup being used to cool pallets of berries. And I see someone in the chat says a great deep dive on refrigeration, recommends Frostbite by Nicola Twilley. Okay, that's the end of my section. So we got 45 minutes left, and I'd love to turn it over to Julia and Patty and Happy. Oh, I'm got feedback. The QR codes aren't working. Okay, I'll look into that, Christina. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Patty and Julia.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks, Galen. I'll introduce myself real quick. Hi, I'm Julia DeGenero with Store at Cold. I'm our Senior Sales and Marketing Manager. Here to support all-knowing Patty, who will be walking us through the rest of this. So please, Patty, take it away.
Hi. I'm Patty. I'm one of the co-founders of the CoolBot company. From the inception of this little controller, the idea of this controller is to provide inexpensive cooling. The CoolBot controller attaches with just 2 wires to a standard window air conditioner in your well-insulated space. It can be a cooler that you buy or that you build. And this will force the air conditioner to go colder than the room temperature that it's normally going to give you, and it can go right down to refrigerator temperatures. So this one little controller can do all that. Now, this is quite different from the forced air cooling that Galen was describing. This is not forced air. This is very gentle cooling. This is wonderful for things like your herbs, lettuces, things that can't have that hard, cold air moving all the time, or that the air would dry out, or possibly even after you've already chilled and gotten all the field heat out of something like watermelons or butternut squash, then you can put it in a cooler, in a CoolBot cooler. And the technology for the CoolBot cooler tends to cost about 20% of a standard refrigerator compressor. And I mentioned that you could build your own cooler. We're showing a bunch of different styles. The physics is always the same. Cold air falls. It's important to insulate your floor. Or if you're not trying to get below about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, you could work on a concrete floor. You could work on an insulated concrete floor too. When you pour the concrete, you could lay down insulation underneath the concrete. That is kind of ideal. That gives you the strength. You can hose it down. It's also insulated. And any money that you spend on insulation, you will save on energy down the road. Now, if you're building a standard stationary cooler, the one in this display is an outdoor cooler. This is great in temperatures above freezing. Once the temperatures drop below freezing, the air conditioner works by taking moisture out of the air, so that moisture can freeze up in the back of the air conditioner. So this will work great in temperatures that are not freezing. The peaked roof on this one for the outdoor cooler, this is great. You can put a vent, just a small vent in each end to keep the airflow going through the ceiling, and then build a flat ceiling on the inside. So you have that, you don't have hot air getting stuck in the attic portion of your cooler. And when you insulate, we have a link here to insulation types, and using waterproof insulation is absolutely vital. I've had people call me back that used fiberglass insulation, and they'll call and tell me that my cooler is weeping, and they'll have puddles of water along the floor. The fiberglass insulation acts like a sponge, and after a while, that condensation where hot meets cold, you're going to get water, and eventually your insulation is going to be basically useless. So rigid foam is the answer. We recommend a closed cell foam. Open cell foam is water resistant. It's okay, but go for the closed cell foam. It is much better. And you'll not only install this between the studs of the cooler that you're building, but also over the studs if you have wood studs. If you're in a situation in like a trailer where there's metal studs, you can glue the styrofoam to the studs or to the wall of the trailer, whichever happens to work in your situation. But the idea is to get it as airtight as possible. You don't want any ventilation in there. And when you're using the CoolBot, we have a link to a sizing guide. You want to make sure that your air conditioner is sized properly for the size of your cooler and the approximate temperature that you want to keep. If it's too big, you're going to have too many temperature fluctuations. If it's too small, it's going to work too hard and tend to dry out the air. So that said, since cold air falls, you always want to install your air conditioner up high in your cooler, eye level, maybe a little higher depending on the height of the ceiling. And the height of your ceiling should not be more than about 18 inches more than where you're planning to store product. If you go too high, you're just paying to chill space you're not using. So there's no good reason for it. So if you have, say, an 8-foot ceiling, you want to put the top of that air conditioner at around 6.5 feet, and it's got to tilt. That is vital. It's where condensation comes in. The air conditioner takes humidity out of the air, not as much as a standard refrigerator compressor, but it does dry the air out slightly, and it depends on that water being able to drip out the back of the air conditioner. So you want to tilt the air conditioner about 1 inch from the front to lower in the back. And if you're building in a truck or a trailer, this is also really important. And it's important to be careful of how you park the trailer. Make sure that after you park it, that the air conditioner is still tilted downward in the back. If you're just parking it for a couple of minutes, you don't worry about it. But if you're parking it overnight, definitely, that is definitely a consideration. As far as trailers, building in a trailer, floor insulation is vital, absolutely vital. You have the heat from the road rising up, and you have cool air falling inside your cooler. So where those two meet, you have got to have great insulation in the floor of any trailer. Also, if you're building a stationary cooler with a wooden floor insulation, wood has virtually no insulating value. And when you're building the walls and ceiling for the cooler, you want to wind up with one solid envelope of insulation. So you might put 1 or 2 layers between the studs and then put 2 more layers over the studs. You can put them all over the studs and then not have to make as many cuts. You'll have a more efficient cooler, depending if you have the size, if you can spare those extra 4 inches on each side. This is going to give you successful cooling and very economical. Very important right now.
Patty, can you talk a little bit about these 4 different options that we're seeing on the screen here, from DIY to turnkey, and like the pros and cons about them, or when they might be a good fit?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've touched on the DIY stationary cooler and on the mobile coolers. The retrofit cooler is usually pretty easy. It's usually a cooler which has had a standard refrigerator compressor, which you want to remove so that you don't have an air gap. And then install the air conditioner in a wall, up high in the wall. Very simple, and that should be already insulated to refrigeration standards. You want to get up to R25 for refrigerator temperatures. It's okay to go higher. Over about R32 is probably overkill for a refrigerator. And then the turnkey models. This is something that we sell, and this is so convenient. 2 people can set it up in a couple hours. If you move, you can disassemble it and reassemble it in another spot. You can buy it with an insulated floor or without, if you're setting up on concrete or on insulated concrete. And once you price out the cost of the materials to do it yourself, compare it to the price of the turnkey cooler, which you're going to set up in 2 hours, and it's going to be ready to go.
And I can add a little bit to
Yes,
that as
please.
well. So again, these are cooler types, and I believe Galen's following up after this with links. We have guides and videos on building a stationary cooler on our website if you want to go the mobile route or if you want to go the retrofit route. We're a small team. We filmed those. We did all of these videos at our old office. And if you watch the video and realize, hey, that's a lot of work, the turnkey option might be a good solution. This came out of us reaching out to our existing customer base and saying, what do you like about your CoolBot? What don't you? And a lot of people noted that they loved their CoolBot, but they just simply didn't have the time to build another one. So we've got a turnkey solution as well. That ships from our manufacturing facility in California, and then would ship to all you folks up in Washington State. But all of the guides and videos to get started on any of these are on our website. And our team is
Julia,
always happy to help.
what is the turnaround time right now on a turnkey cooler?
Lead times right now are approximately 3 weeks. We see that things get busier in the summer and lead times extend. So if a turnkey solution is something you're interested in, please reach out to our team. Again, all of these guides are on our website, and our customer support team is always happy to help.
I would just note one other kind of benefit I see of the turnkey is that it is you can assemble it quickly, which means you can also disassemble it quickly and move it or shift it if your operation scales or moves, which may be harder for a DIY stationary approach. So that's another thing to be considering as your business is maybe trying to grow is, where are you going to be growing into?
Yep.
And then we did have
That
one
is a good
related
point.
question in the chat, I think related to the DIY mobile. We see a picture of a trailer there, and they want to know if you've seen folks use it as refrigeration for a box truck.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Definitely. Definitely. If you have a truck that the cab is separated from the box, you can put the air conditioner in the front. And for that, we do recommend a heavy screen over the front of the air conditioner to allow for airflow, but to prevent rocks from damaging your air conditioner. And the same principle, make sure that air conditioner is tilted a little bit down in the front, so that, or the back of the air conditioner is tilted down so that the condensation drains out. Now, if you had a cab attached, you would have to separate the refrigerated section from the driver's section with insulation. You've got to have a solid envelope of insulation. And the back is another fine place for an air conditioner. The sides, not so good, because you don't really want something sticking out 18 inches out the side of your trailer or truck while you're driving. But the back is good as long as you don't have an overhead door. If you have two doors, you can put the CoolBot in one side and use the other door for ingress and egress, or some trucks have side doors, which is great too. The overhead doors, not recommended. They're really, really hard to insulate properly.
Okay.
More about condensation. I know I was asked about this earlier. Condensation forms when warm air meets cold air. This goes back to insulation. Like really good insulation, tape your seams, stagger your seams. And if you're using glue, this is going to be a couple-day project because you can do one layer in one day, and then you usually have to brace it before you can, and allow the glue to dry before you can add another layer of insulation. And multiple layers are really important.
I think we went over this. There was another question in the chat. Can you speak to building a CoolBot walk-in in a shipping container?
Yeah, if you can get an insulated shipping container, you are golden. If it's non-insulated, you can insulate it yourself, using the techniques that I described, using the solid styrofoam insulation, stagger the seams. If you have a 40-foot box and you don't need the whole 40 feet, just insulate 20 feet or 15 feet, whatever you need, so that you're not paying to insulate and chill so much space. This can also work if you have, for instance, you're growing berries, which like to be at about 33 degrees. And then you have some other produce that doesn't really like to be so cold. You could separate that cooler into two separate sections with insulation in the middle. And then you could have your two separate temperatures in basically two adjoining coolers. So that is a really economical way to do it. Yeah, they make absolutely fantastic coolers.
Awesome.
If you're in the direct sun, consider shade. If you can install your cooler under a tree, under a lean-to shed that would provide permanent shade. All these little things help. And especially, you want the air conditioner in the shade. That is the only non-insulated part of your cooler. Now, these turnkey walk-in coolers that we sell do come with a little, like a shade, a permanent metal shade for the air conditioner. It protects it from the worst of the weather, but it also gives it shade, which will just make it more efficient. If you have, for instance, a large, a 40-foot box, you can definitely use multiple air conditioners and multiple CoolBots. Once you get to a huge area where you'd be using 6 or more air conditioners, then you should also look into using a standard refrigerator compressor. This is where the scale for that becomes more economical than using many small ones. But the beauty of having a CoolBot is you can have backup. You can keep a second air conditioner in your closet. And I do recommend this. Sometimes things happen to them. It might be very simple. It might be something you can fix. But if you have a cooler full of produce, just pull it out, replace it with another one. In the wintertime, when you don't have anything to do, tinker with it. Maybe you have to replace the circuit board. Maybe it's something small. Maybe it just needs to be cleaned. But definitely you can have a backup. You can have a backup. The CoolBot almost never goes down. Sometimes a wire will fail. So it's okay to have a backup set of wires, but I wouldn't worry about having a backup CoolBot. It is so reliable. And the CoolBot Pro can be hooked up to your phone so that it will send you messages. If your temperature rises by a certain number of degrees for a certain number of minutes, usually set it for 20 minutes. So if you're loading stuff into your cooler, it's not beeping you all the time. It will let you know if your temperature is out of range. So you can come down and see exactly what you need to do. And you may have had a power failure at your cooler, and all you need to do is switch your breaker back on. It can be something that simple, but this will save your produce. It'll keep it from warming up overnight. You'll know about it in a few minutes.
Okay, well,
Cool.
unless there's any other tips, I think we can get on to more just kind of open Q&A. Any other final parting tips, Patty?
Oh, somebody asks about a door.
Yeah, we can get to those.
Yeah, if you have a concrete floor, you might want a door that's wide enough to be able to get a pallet jack in. If you're just walking in and out, a standard door size is good. You can actually use an insulated house front door without windows, of course, and then glue another sheet or two of insulation to the inside of it. That's one of the easiest ways: by a pre-hung house front door, and that's will save you those those details of having to get the door exactly right.
And then John asked if there's a maximum size for a CoolBot. You had kind of touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, it depends. If you're just using 1, 2, or 3 air conditioners, if that's the size for your cooler, you're in great shape. If you're getting bigger than that, then price out a standard refrigerator compressor too, because it might be a better deal. And how many air conditioners you would need would depend on the size of your cooler plus the temperature that you need to keep it. So you can figure all that by knowing those. Go to the size chart for your air conditioner and figure that out if you've got a really huge space.
And I'll note one other kind of variable in this calculation is the cost of having someone out to service compressors. And maybe just, is there someone around you that can do that for a reasonable price? Or are you going to have to pay someone to come from very far away, and that's going to cost extra? We find that oftentimes right now there is a shortage of skilled compressor technicians, and so that is a big cost to consider with using kind of more traditional compressors.
Yeah, that's one thing I truly love about the CoolBot is it's so DIY. You are so energy refrigeration independent. And having a backup, you're good. And if your cooler went down on a weekend, you might have to wait 12 or 24 hours for a repairman to come. And how much product would you lose in that amount of time?
Any other questions in the chat? I think these questions are really great. They really bring this topic home for folks. Feel free to unmute too if you're not feeling like typing. You can ask your question out loud.
You can use the cooler will have, this is true for almost any cooler, but you'll have natural variations in temperature. So if you're holding something that wants to be cooler and something that wants to be a few degrees warmer, you put the warmer product at the top, and it's going to be a little cooler on the bottom shelf. And your shelving, you'd of course want your shelving to be a wire, something that air would flow through to give you better cooling. For little delicate herbs and mesclun lettuce, things like that, we used to use those, the lugs, the big plastic lugs with a lid on it. And even when we had delicate greens, head lettuce in wooden crates, we would cover it overnight with a wet sheet so that it kept the moisture, but was still able to stay cool.
And Ivy mentioned just thinking about how much electricity you're going to pull. One of the benefits of CoolBot, I think relatively low electricity pull, but definitely something to consider.
Yeah, CoolBot uses in testing, it's been shown to use about 40% and less energy than a traditional style compressor, walk-in cooler. So definitely energy savings is one of the features by using a CoolBot system versus a traditional compressor system. And I see Peter's asking pricing. So standard CoolBot is going to be $374, and our Wi-Fi enabled CoolBot Pro, that is $419, and it does not have a subscription fee. And some people are like, well, I don't have Wi-Fi where I'm setting up my cooler, but I might in the future. The CoolBot Pro operates just like the CoolBot. It's going to get you to your set refrigeration temperature with or without Wi-Fi. But when connected to Wi-Fi, as Patty mentioned, the CoolBot Pro will send you critical text alerts if your cooler has gotten too hot, or if your cooler has gotten too cold, or if it's experienced a power outage, letting you know, hey, we haven't heard from your CoolBot Pro, you might want to go check on it. And I know, Galen, we had talked about a coupon. I don't know if you wanted to introduce that now. Sorry.
Of course.
Yay, there
Just
it
putting
is.
some more links in the chat. Yeah, so we're the discount code is WSDA 50 with the CoolBot website, $50 off CoolBot or CoolBot Pro. And I'll just mention too, if you already have a CoolBot and you're like, oh, maybe should I get a CoolBot Pro? You can also find just Wi-Fi enabled thermometers that will alert you if a temperature goes out of range. So you could pair a CoolBot with something like that and not needing to upgrade to a CoolBot Pro. And then on the left there is a feedback form for this workshop, but I'm going to go ahead and get a link to put in the chat as well, because I think something went happened with these. Not that QR code might work, but here is the link to our feedback form for this. It's really helpful for folks to fill out the feedback form. It allows us to do more workshops like this. And so I'll go ahead and I just put the workshop feedback form link in the chat. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. We've got like 10 minutes left, and we can keep just chatting and answering questions. Yeah.
Galen, I wanted to add just one thing really fast too. Like Galen mentioned, these workshops are designed for you. So if you have any other ideas of topics we should be exploring, please let us know. On our website, we currently have a recording from a previous one on how to design a wash pack for produce safety. So we're always going to keep these resources accessible and available, and we want to design more.
Thanks.